Everywhere you look, someone has a tumbler, and I bet you there's not one person that you know who doesn't own one. Tumblers have opened a world of possibilities for customization, and engraving just happens to be the most popular method. Because this is one of the highest quality ways to customize a tumbler, that opens the door to generating hundreds and thousands of dollars in revenue. Tumblers are so universal, and having a laser to engrave any design you want gives you the power to target a range of different customers. So if you don't own a laser yet and you're looking to invest in one, this is your sign. In this video, I'll be reviewing and testing out how to engrave tumblers with the xTool P2 laser and rotary attachments. So now we're going to start unboxing the rotary attachment for the xTool P2 laser. And let me quickly just say that I really love xTool's packaging. Everything that I've got from them so far has come nicely packed and secure. So let's get into it a little bit, and there are two different attachments that you can use to engrave cups with. Here's a little overview of what that looks like, and we're going to first test out the roller attachment. To get my machine ready, I'm going to start off by unscrewing the screw that is holding my tray in place. And all the screwdrivers and materials that I'm using come with the xTool. I moved my tray down in the meantime, and now I'm going to start removing the slabs to make room for the tumbler. Here's what your tumbler will look like on the rollers, and as you can see, it does not balance on its own, and that's where this piece comes in. So now I'm taking the leveler that comes with the rotary attachment, and I'm placing that at the top of my tumbler. And now I'm going to place my balancer underneath the very end of my tumbler. And now I'm going to keep rising the balancer until you can see that the tumbler is completely leveled. Now I'm going to go ahead and place the roller and the balancer inside of the xTool and connect the corresponding cord that goes to the roller. In the inside of the xTool at the top right, you can see a port, and that's where I'm going to go ahead and connect the cable. And now I'm going to connect the opposite end to the top of the roller platform. I'm going to take the measuring tape that comes with the xTool and wrap that around my cup to get the length. Don't forget that number because you're going to need it later. Here I just double checked again to make sure my cup was leveled, and it was actually slightly off, so good thing I checked. It's time to head into the software, and the first thing I'm doing is changing the slabs flat to the laser cylindrical option. After that, it's time to make sure that the red dot is positioned to the highest point of your tumbler. And this is just a test tumbler, so I'm going to pick a random design from the xTool software, and they actually have a lot to choose from. Here's where you're going to need the length that we measured earlier, so go ahead and edit your design to fit the dimensions of your tumbler. Line up your design with the green line, and then go ahead and change it from score to engrave. And now you're ready to start, to hit the green process button at the top. And now I'm heading over to my machine and starting that up. So this tumbler took about 46 minutes to engrave. So right off the bat, I can definitely tell that the alignment for the design is off. It also looks like the settings may have been too powerful, so let's clean this up and check it out. We're just using a microfiber towel with some rubbing alcohol, but if you have a better way to clean these, please let me know in the comments down below. So as I mentioned earlier, you can definitely see that the alignment is off. It actually started off great, that placement was perfect, and then the design slowly started going crooked, so maybe the balancer started to shift. The settings for this definitely look like they were too hard, because as you can see, it's completely black when it should have been like a nice steel gray. And now I'm going to have my helper set up the chuck attachment so we can compare. Lost some of the footage for this pink cup, so we're actually going to be using the Stanley cup that's going to be shown later in the video. But basically, you want to put your tumbler inside of the chuck, and if the chuck legs are too small or too big, you can adjust them. You can kind of see here that when I manually spin the cup, there's kind of like a bobble or like a bounce, and that shouldn't be happening. The solution to this is really easy. All you're going to do is take this little tool and tighten the base of the chuck. And after you've tightened it a little bit, go ahead and test it out again. I can still see that there was like some slight bouncing and bobbling, so I went ahead and tightened that again until I was finally happy with the results. And I'm just double checking that here again one more time, and you really want to take your time with this step. This is a pretty important step because you want to make sure that your cup is nice and secure. Now that I've got it pretty secure, I'm going to show you what it should look like. As you can see, the bobbling at the end is pretty much gone and the tumbler is nice and secure. So as you can remember from the first tumbler that we did, the settings were definitely too powerful, so here we're going to tone them down a little bit. We're going to set the power to 60%. For the speed, we're going to do 200 millimeters per second. And for the last option, we're going to be selecting 200 lines per centimeter. And by the way, you're going to see this in a bit, but I definitely recommend saving these settings. They were amazing. Now I'm going to hit process at the top right corner, hit start, and then head over to the machine. And lastly, I'm just going to hit the start button on my machine and let's watch this engrave.
I'm just being honest, baby, it's our time. All we do is fight. Maybe we should call it what it is.
So now that it's done, again, we're just cleaning this up with some rubbing alcohol and a microfiber towel. And this design didn't take too long at all because it was a bit smaller. And like I mentioned earlier, these settings were chef's kiss. It barely scored the surface and it left the most beautiful steel gray color. I absolutely fell in love with this one. And lastly, let's test out a full cup wrap. A step I forgot to mention for the pink tumbler is to remove the handle. Pink tumbler had screws holding in the handle, so that one was really easy. This 40-ounce Stanley tumbler required a Allen wrench, so if you don't have that lying around, just a heads up. Now I'm taking some pliers and just folding those screw holes back a little bit. Make sure to fold these inwards facing towards each other, not the opposite way. And I feel like this goes without saying, but just to be safe, make sure you remove the wrapper. And again, I'm taking the tape measure and wrapping that all around my cup. When you're measuring the length, make sure to go over that fold if your tumbler has one. And here I'm just repeating the steps from earlier in the video around the 4.5 minute mark. And I just want to say again to take your time with this step because you want to make sure that your cup isn't bouncing around and that it's nice and steady. Just repeating the other steps as well, and I'm going to go ahead and place my tumbler and the rotary attachment inside of the xTool, and I'm going to plug that in on the top right corner. Here I am centering and also making sure that that red dot is sitting at the highest point of my tumbler. And next I'll be taking my balancer and adding that underneath the bottom of my tumbler. And I'm going to place the leveler on top of that and keep rising the balancer until I see that that leveler is getting centered. And you can see that the more the balancer moves up, that little air bubble is moving towards the center in between the black lines. If it looks like the tumbler is slightly slanted, that's actually normal and it should be pointing in kind of like an upward angle. And here's just a little tip in case you get an error message that your machine can't register the distance. All you have to do is keep raising your tray and you want your tumbler to be touching where the slabs would normally be. This is about 20 minutes in, and right about here I started to realize that I messed up on the placement of the tumbler. What I should have done was positioned it right by the handle so that it would start next to it and laser all around and end up by the other side of the handle. That would have made the wrap seamless, so something to note is to definitely pay attention to the placement of your tumbler, especially if you're going to be doing a wrap. And here's a good example of what I'm talking about. You can see that the design is heading towards the handles when it should have been lasering away from it and facing the opposite way. So if this does happen, it's not a big deal, it's not the end of the world, but just in an attempt to fix it a little bit, I went ahead and paused the machine and rotated the cup ever so slightly until it went past the handle. And you can see here, this is actually where I should have placed the tumbler when starting, but I totally forgot. So for future reference, this is where you want to start your tumbler if you're doing a wrap. Here I paused the machine again to test this hack that I saw where you can take 2 layers of foil and some painter's tape to cover up the tumbler logo so the laser won't engrave over it. I also probably recommend doing this step beforehand, but it had literally just occurred to me. Now that it's done, let's go ahead and take this out. And this time around, I actually had to use this little tool to unscrew the base of the chuck because it was a little too tight. And the tumbler always looks a little scary when it's recently done engraving, but once you clean it up and everything, it should look something like this. Here are the final results, and I think it came out so stinking cute. It would have been better if I had done the placement correctly. I did notice that the hack didn't really work too well. The logo still got cut off a little bit, so if you have any tips to fix that, let me know in the comments down below. Overall, I would definitely say that I really like the chuck attachment much better than the roller attachment. I truly love the xTool P2 laser. It is a fantastic machine, and there are so many possibilities and projects that you can do, and engraving tumblers is just one of those things. And I know the machine can be pricey, but you really are paying for the quality, and if you start engraving cups, you will make that back in no time. So that's the video, and I hope you liked it. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to check out my TikTok and Instagram for more content, and I will see you in the next one.